I now know to run wiki spec in front of Kevin. So
yeah, especially when somebody runs Venezuelan government propaganda as if it's true.
Stupid Venezuelan.
Yeah, we had to cut the answer to that. I mean,
I was just like, whatever. Kevin, do you want in on the email chain?
Fine I'll hit you up if I need anything.
Cool. Bethany, you want my email?
Sure.
It's Justin J. Flick.
Just a minute.
Yep.
So eager.
I am very eager.
What was it?
Justin, Jay
J-A-Y?
FLICK @gmail.com. Freaking Jared just messaged me. He's like, be nice.
Was that advice or an implicit threat?
Well, nice is in all caps, so I believe it's an implicit threat.
I just sent you an email.
Okay.
Make sure that's you.
Yep, that's me.
Alright. Okay. Put in that email. I can actually touch something now.
Which half are you reading?
Interdiction.
Okay, for sure.
Wait, what? Zach's not running habeas corpus? What is also this madness?
Stack's not running PMCs. That's my shock. That's more what I'm shocked about.
I'm really hoping Zach's running PFCs this weekend.
Shay's been rolling with that app. I don't know if she likes it.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
I just
That's the we have really interesting answers. But I would talk about them because, you know, they got a shill in the room.
I'll talk about it. Their answers to T are really long.
Oh. We don't care about T on that one anymore.
I know. I just find it funny. I feel like that needs to be I feel like someone needs to make an argument as like a standard on T, like if the app spins
you want
more
a
than
OneDrive file or a copy?
what?
OneDrive file or copy?
Copy. Like if the app spins more than 2 minutes on T, that's probably the reason they're not topical. So I would lose under that standard every debate.
I think I'd probably buy that standard.
Call it an appearance of impropriety.
Like, they're not topical, they know it. That's why there's been new time.
It's gonna be my Carly strap tomorrow.
Alright, you guys are good. Timing, prep time, all that good stuff. So I can do it easy.
Yep.
Sweet. And just so we're all in the right room. CSU SAC, Bethany Davis, and Chico Joseph Flake. Alright, we're good.
Okay, and I'm good to go.
You're good? Everybody good?
Mm-hmm.
First is the inherency. Demand-side drug reform is coming, but supply-side policies are holding it back. Dickinson 16. Tied into double federal drug treatment, Obama underscored shifts in the prosecution of the war on drugs. The deeper infrastructure of the war on drugs remains unaltered. Work focused on public health does not replace paramilitary anti-trafficking efforts known as interdiction abroad. That the government's own metrics, the drug war is failing. The administration for the first time is seeking more demand reduction efforts than those focused on supply. The draconian supply side is held steady. There has been reorganization. These cuts have downsized the role of the DoD in combating the international drug trade, reducing funding for drug eradication. Solvency plan. The United States federal government should substantially reduce militarized drug interdiction and eradication efforts by Southern Command in Latin America. Latin America is pushing for reform. Counter narcotics are the main issues. Now is the time to act. Newman and Romero, 15. Across the Americas, governments are resisting the tenets of U.S.-led approach to fighting drugs, challenging nutritional strategies like the eradication of crops and militarized stance. For the first time in 40 years, there's significant pushback from Latin American countries. Leaders are looking at the militarized approach and saying they don't want 40 more years of Colombian-like policies. We should be talking about adopting reforms to international drug control policy. Interdiction fails, leads to shifts in trafficking, and delegitimizes institutions. Collie 14. Interdiction programs have failed to halt supply in consumer states and instead to appear to have facilitated the migration of organized crime, and lack of reliable data regarding drug flow along with how the intensity of interdiction efforts in a given country makes it extremely difficult to determine the extent to which supply intervention is responsible for these shifts. Central America is an important point of passage. The balloon effect is one explanation given as to why such policies have failed to work. As a result of security force operations is that of the Hydra effect. When one head is cut off, two more grow back to take its place. Trafficking migrates because of increased interdictions. It brings with it high levels of violence and the capacity to corrupt, resulting in rising insecurity and a weakening of state institutions in a growing number of countries. Advantage 1. Counter-narcotics operations cause naval overstretch. Avoids trade-offs with vital operations. Till 13. The role of navies was simply to guard the state, but now the function has become more. The result in choices may be particularly painful at a time of budgetary constraint. Counter-narcotics operations imply resources, especially warships that cannot be somewhere else. When navies face resource constraints, this is very serious consideration. Choices have to be made between counter-narcotics and other roles. These will not be easy choices to make when it comes to spending and acquisition programs. Counter-narcotics require specialist capabilities, training at a cost and loss investment in conventional capabilities. Navies seem increasingly likely to have to integrate counter-narcotics whether they like it or not. Loss of naval effectiveness collapses hegemony. Cropsey 10. American maritime strategy played a major role in binding the international system. What are the consequences if those bonds crumble as a result of shrinking Navy with reduced presence and a weakening ability to project power and respond to serious crises? The size, shape, and strategy of the Navy are a critical element in America's position as the world's great power. The impact of this weakening includes a major shift of power away from American influence in Asia, the rise of China, the loss of America's ability to shape the future global strategic environment, and a powerful reinforcement that the U.S. is in decline. Hedge solves great power wars. Keck 14. Hegemonic transition periods have historically been the most destabilizing in history. Even if all parties have benign intentions, the rise of new powers necessitates revisions to the rules. This is impossible in any organized fashion given the anarchic nature. America's preponderance of power has prevented a great power war and restrained major regional powers from coming to blows. As the unipolar era comes to a close, the possibility of great power conflict rises dramatically. If the transitions are managed, there is still likely to be significant negative effects. It is asserted that challenges can only be solved through multilateral cooperation. Examples include climate pandemics, terrorism, financial crises. The unipolar system is uniquely suited for organizing effective global action on these issues. This is because there is a clear leader who can take the initiative, compel others. Unipolar's preponderance lessens the intensity of competition. The rise of other powers will make solving transnational issues more difficult. Advantage 2. Colombia is in a state of transition. FARC peace talks are going well, but reintegration and state building are key to enact them. Steel 16. Colombia has been fighting the longest running civil war in the world, and it may finally come to an end very soon. Some of the details still to be negotiated or treaty. What comes next? Reintegration, reparations, and restitution, and state building. Government will have to move into territories where the rule of law is weak and insecurity is high. Regions essentially governed by the FARC. State building is difficult and messy. Demobilization and reparations. The Colombian government has already started its efforts. Despite the challenges, this is the most promising step the parties have arrived at since the war began. Ending counter-narcotics helps rebuild Colombia. That's key to ensure peaceful development. Also, at 15. Colombia and the U.S. agreed that aid to fight drug trafficking will be used for peace building in the event Santos signs peace with the FARC rebels. Both the FARC and ELN have promised to abandon the illicit trade in the event of peace. The U.S. aid used to fight the drug trafficking rebels will be allocated to social programs to support peace building. Peaceful development mitigates violence from paramilitaries, helps pass deal with the public. Kovalik and Brown 16. Another major player in all of this is the U.S. government. What change that has to happen is to stop funding the Colombian military and start spending on real development in that country. The agreement still needs to be passed in a natural referendum. If there is at least some level of fairness of the violence of the paramilitaries threatened is kept to a minimum, then I think the referendum will pass. FARC resurgence risks nuclear arms race in Latin America. Fleishman 13. Assistance revitalized FARC and incorporated it with the Bolivarian Revolution. He promoted asymmetric warfare and nuclear cooperation, chaos in a region that will see the proliferation of authoritarianism, insurgency, international terrorism, rogue states, arms race, and nuclear activity. The deterioration has security implications as external forces can penetrate it. Authoritarianism and the proliferation of non-state actors are likely to continue if no one moves to counter them. Latin American proliferation is uniquely unstable and causes extinction. Code 09. Nuclear weapons in Latin America are destabilizing. The hint of a program would make the entire region paranoid and increase incentive to produce a bomb. A new weapon has a contagious effect. All countries will follow to keep the balance of power. De Silva calculates attacks that could cause the Amazon going up in flames. If a Latin American state were to have a nuclear weapon, that country would be targeted in an international conflict. An arms race would contribute to armed conflicts. Search for weapons increases countries' likelihood to overreact or become hostile. The perception of an increased imbalance of power would lead countries to find a way to keep the status quo for fear of losing the race.
Alright, so explain to me the warrant your Dickinson evidence gives on the comparison between demand side drug reform and supply side.
Dixonson's, sorry, say that again?
So like in your Dickinson evidence, where does it make a comparison between supply side and demand side? Like what's the difference?
The difference between demand side and supply side policies is that supply side policies work on the drugs in it and interdicting them and getting rid of them, eradicating them. Demand side works on the people who are affected by the usage of these drugs.
Sure. So you say that it's holding it back. Why can't we do demand side and supply side reductions?
When we do demand side and supply side, it's it's hedged. Like,
What do you mean?
supply side is what the countries don't like if you continue through my plan. Supply side is what is hurting our relations with these countries. We reduce supply side, increase demand side, and
Okay.
we look better.
What countries are asking for drug reform per your Newman and Romero evidence?
Newman and Romero.
The first card under solvency.
So in Latin America, well, you can look at my advantage. Colombia is one that's pushing for reform.
Okay.
In other countries.
All right, let's talk about the naval power. So, what other things does like the Fourth Fleet or the Navy that is attached to Southern Command? What else do they do that it trades off with?
They, well, if you read till 13, they have to choose between drug interdiction and doing their regular duties, patrolling the seas, going around, and
Okay, so how many ships does Fourth Fleet have, and how many of those are tied up in counter narcotics operations?
I don't know.
Okay, move on to the Columbia argument. We're talking about it. Okay.
51.
Sure. So, your Steel 16 evidence is from June. Has nothing changed in the FARC talks?
Yes, but that's not what this takes a position on.
Sure. So you'll concede that your uniqueness on the advantage is just outdated.
Not by much.
Okay. And
Still.
in your Osama evidence, doesn't it use the term agreed that they will change their drug trafficking laws? Like, why doesn't SQO solve for your advantage?
SQO doesn't solve because there's still, if you look at that first line, Colombia and the U.S. agreed that aid to fight drug trafficking will be used in the event of
Okay.
peace.
Sure. I'll start prep. Just take a little bit. Stop and prep at 2:30. Order's going to be 2 off and then case in order.
Sorry, say that again?
2 off and case in order.
Do I need more sheets than?
No, you'll just need 1 sheet for each off position. Yeah. Not gonna run a key against you. That would be mean. I'll just keep calling speed until I'm at a rate that's comfortable with you. So I will adjust once we can get a comfortable speed. Is everybody ready?
Can I get a copy?
Oh, did it not send yet? Check it now. First, the interpretation for BOD 2002, substantial reduction is defined as the increase of 50% or more in the total funding of quantities. 2 is the definition of Southern Command's rules 10 and 16, countering transnational organized crime and terrorism, supporting disaster response operations, establishing cyber defense capabilities, emphasizing solid human rights foundation, the cornerstone of everything we do. 3 is that my interpretation is the affirmative must reduce 50% or more of the total role of Southern Command. 4 is the violation. The affirmative only reduces counter narcotics, means Southern Command still has other rules. 5 are the standards. A are limits. Checks on substantial are key to limiting affirmatives that take minor actions. Limits also helps our depth of education because we avoid racing the bottom for the most obscure act. B is precision. This isn't just another generic substantiality. My definition comes from Department of Defense Guidebook is key to best real world education. My interpretation is the debate around actual government procedure. 6 are the voters. A are fairness and education. Fairness is the internal link to education. Without ensuring a fair debate, we cannot create an equal space for discourse to limit the pedagogical value of the discussion we have in round. B is vote here first. NFLD rules make top county stock issue. Top counties prior question the affirmative impacts and thus must be evaluated before any other position. Next is the dissat. On the uniqueness, Columbia is making major strides in fighting human trafficking. U.S. Department of State 14. Columbia does not fully comply with the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking, however, it is making significant efforts to do so. Authorities continue to undertake awareness campaigns, investigate and prosecute transnational trafficking cases. Authorities increased the number of labor trafficking investigations, reported 6 convictions related to child recruitment by illegal armed groups in 2013, some of which would involve forcible child recruitment. The government offered victims of transnational trafficking repatriation and short-term emergency assistance and provided services to child victims of sex trafficking and forcible recruitment by illegal armed groups on the link. Southern Command currently handles Columbia's fight against drug crime. The plan reverses this. Southern Command 16. Southcom's ongoing strategic partnership with Columbia continues to support interagency efforts to interdict illicit trafficking in international waters and airspace, providing planning, training, logistical support, and intelligence support, providing non-lethal equipment, including helicopter support, intelligence platforms, command and control systems, and sponsoring counter-drug and counterterrorism training exercises on the internal link. Columbia's military operations combating drugs and terror trade off with fighting human trafficking. Wilcox and 15. Armed insurgent groups ungoverned territory in the fight against the illicit drug trade are seen as paramount, leaving little time to focus on human trafficking. The manner in which the governments now fight against them is making the situation work. The active presence of large armed non-governmental groups is a major factor in inhibiting Columbia's capacity and will to combat human trafficking, resulting in no significant reduction in the problem. On the impact, human trafficking is a unique form of structural violence against women, outweighs the act. Santos, Gomez, and Doherty 10. Sex trafficking cannot be understood as a one-dimensional interpretation. Sex trafficking exists as a form of violence against women. Sex trafficking cannot be understood as a one-dimensional interpretation based on gender and oppression of women by patriarchy. Since the complexity of the actual sex industry invades this analysis, trafficking emerges not only from patriarchal relationships, but also from state, capitalist, imperialist, and racial power, since all converge in the sex market. The sex industry created and managed by men, in which women have no economy or power to act. Let's go to case. First turn, any freed up military resources get shifted to Asia, etc. at all 13. The United States is shifting substantial military capacities from other theaters of operation to Asia Pacific and restructuring regional security agreements to generate more widely dispersed U.S. forces across the region. It included high-profile new military developments and expanded security arrangements which emphasize greater military integration. On the impact, China will perceive this as aggression, causes miscalculation, leads to military escalation and regional conflict. Goalies are 12. Most likely and dangerous contingencies of clash stemming from U.S. military operations within China's EEZ that promotes an armed Chinese response. China does so in aggressive ways that increase the risk of an accident. The United States might respond to dangerous behavior by Chinese planes or ships by dispatching armed escorts. A miscalculation or misunderstanding can result in a deadly exchange of fire, leading to further military escalation. Next is go to solvency. No solvency, demand reduction policy fails, normalizes drug use. 30 years of Australia policies prove Steinholt et al. 15. The shift in policy from an emphasis on prevention, education, supply and demand reduction went to focus on prevention and treatment to reduce drug use and harm. By 2013, it was reduce harm irrespective of levels of drug use. This sends an ambiguous message to our community that drug use is inevitable and drug use is normal. Harm minimization appeared to encourage the maintenance of a drug habit and gave rise to the idea that taking drugs is all right. Go to the advantage. No link. The Fourth Fleet has no ships, probably mean the trade-off doesn't exist. Sanchez? in 16. The 4th Fleet comments NAVO's website summarizes activities. No vessels or aircraft will be permanently assigned to the 4th Fleet as part of the reestablishment. U.S. 4th Fleet is an organizational fleet staffed to fulfill a planning and coordination mission. U.S. 4th Fleet is focused on strengthening friendships and partnerships. Next, go to the link level again. Their author concludes the war on drugs need military support as the key operation. Says there are no silver bullets to the war on drugs. Cost apply to solvency till 13. The consequences of the illicit drug trade for individual state and system security justify a substantial military role in response. The threat of the illicit trade drugs need to be holistically as well as systematically. Responding to multidimensional threats posed by the trade in illicit drugs is a highly complex matter which there are no simple solutions, no silver bullets. On the internal link, Navy is already obsolete and ineffective. Double bind, either naval power is not key to hedge or the impact should have already been triggered. Reading 15. Although the Navy ships perform spectacularly well against third-rate enemies, U.S. Navy surface vessels are obsolete. They are large, slow-moving metal objects that float on the surface of the ocean, no matter how bad it hurts the nation defense. Surface ships are also not only seen by the human eye absent fog or clouds, they are really easily detected by technology such as radar, sonar, satellites, and so forth. Surface ships are too slow, cannot defend themselves, and cannot armor the ships or anti-ship missiles do not damage them. Go to the advantage 2. 1. First, their card is from June of last year. The one, they already denied the peace deal, and then they decided to vote on it again in December. Probably means that probably status quo should solve, but also when you look at her link evidence, it says they already agreed on a deal. Means the U.S. should already be checking their policies in Colombia. Probably means either that the SQO solves or that their advantage scenario is empirically denied. But link turn. Stopping U.S. drug interdiction creates a security vacuum that drug cartels fill, destroys regional stability, and causes violence. Honduras proves. Quintana 14. The epicenter of the region's turmoil is Honduras. Following Honduras' constitutional crisis in 2009, U.S. suspended critical and joint military operations, largely in the form of counter-narcotics assistance. Land, sea, and air counter-narcotics operations were weakened and along the Caribbean coast virtually halted. The subsequent security vacuum along the Caribbean coastline was quickly filled by drug trafficking organizations. Second is going to be straight link turn. Disadvantage functions as a straight turn. The Colombia advantage causes more net instability and triggers the impacts. But on the impact level, no human extinction, Walker in 14. Even after a global firestorm, most species extinct, the Earth would have its atmosphere and oceans. It would be far more habitable. Even after a nuclear war, we don't have the technology to make the entire surface of the Earth radioactive. Even after nuclear war, you wouldn't need that protection except the worst hotspots of radioactivity. If you somehow survive itself, then the Earth will remain a far more benign place to live. But if you even are going to willing to get the risk of the internal link, one card doesn't really specify any true scenarios for Latin American countries to develop nuclear weapons or to proliferate it. But two, I would say U.S. engagement in Latin America probably checks proliferation. The status quo means the only risk of the impact comes from pulling out of the AF. Go ahead and open myself up for cross-X.
On the so security vacuum link turn.
The Honduras argument?
On Colombia on advantage 2 for
Yeah, the Quintana 14 evidence.
yes.
Yeah.
So you're saying that drug cartels fill in behind US?
Yeah, we pulled out of our drug.
I understand that part, but I'm just trying to understand what you're saying.
Yeah, cartels or other non-governmental organizations.
So you're saying link turn and no human extinction.
Yep.
On advantage 1, there's no link. Can you explain the first no link on advantage 1?
Oh, the Sanchez evidence?
Yeah.
Sure. So my argument is your till evidence makes this argument about causes trade-offs and naval overstretch, and my argument is that trade-off just doesn't happen because there are no ships, no Navy action to be able to trade off. It's the trade-off just doesn't happen because it's nothing versus nothing, not something versus nothing.
Okay. And then, so you're saying naval power is not key?
Yeah, my argument is it could be key to hedge. If you win that it is, my card will say that your impact should have already been triggered because of how bad our Navy is now, at a global level. But my argument would be that either it's just not key or it should have been triggered because of how bad the Navy is, right? It functions as a double bind.
Okay. And then, so T, I have to reduce by 50% or more.
Yeah, you have to reduce 50% or more of the total funding of quantities of all of Southern Command's roles.
And then
Sure. The thesis is Colombia is doing a lot to fight human trafficking. It's a major issue. My internal link evidence would say that there is a trade-off there between fighting drugs and fighting human trafficking. And right now they don't have to deal with that trade-off because Southern Command does their drug war for them, meaning they can focus on human trafficking. And human trafficking is like a particularly pervasive form of structural violence, and particularly when you look to the intersectionality of the issue, particularly the state, capitalist, imperialist, and racial power that converge in that market, it constitutes a unique form of structural violence that outweighs the impacts of the affirmative.
Okay. And how does it outweigh?
Sure, my analysis would be is that one, it is like a super unique form of structural violence that is against an already oppressed group, but two, due to the intersectionality of the issue, it is a sort of like a root argument towards all those issues which contribute to the root cause of societal aspects that would cause the affirmative harms.
Taking time. Stopping in 2 minutes.
Okay. Just in the dock or still waiting on that?
Still waiting on it.
Oh, for sure, no worries.
first on the topicality, don't vote on this T position. Counterinterpretation, substantial is flexible. Longcroft 92. Substantial is flexible in the law which substantial fastens itself to becomes infected with substantial flexibility. We meet. Plan reduces drug interdiction, which is substantial. That's relative. Prefer. Words and phrases too. Substantial is a relative term to be gauged by the circumstances surrounding the expression. We meet. Cross-apply the Romero card from solvency. Latin America is calling for reform. The plan is perceived as substantial because it reduces the specific policies that they are mad about. Their evidence is in the Southern Command is the smallest and least prioritized command using a percentage to determine what substantial reduction is makes no sense. They make it impossible to be affirmative because no act falls under their definition. They don't read a definition of role, which makes this argument moot. Nothing they have says role equals presence. Default to reasonability, it's uniquely applicable to determining whether an app is substantial. Stabler 93. The substantial standard does possess ambiguity to the definition of substantial. Substantial is inherently imprecise. Substantial is generally held to reasonableness standard, i.e. would a reasonable mind accept it as adequate. Looking at the violations that the negative produced, saying that I only reduced counter narcotics, which means that Southern Command still has other roles. Look at the resolution of the entire year's debate. The United States federal government should substantially reduce the role of Southern Command in Latin America. It's ambiguous. You get to choose your role under that resolution. We chose interdiction and eradication efforts by Southern Command. Southern Command has so many other roles that reducing the entire thing by 50% or more would basically eradicate Southern Command, which would be inherently bad for many reasons. On his standards of limits, we have, like, the affirmative itself has limited itself to not a minor action, but we have limited ourselves. We're predictable. We are being precise. Also, on voters, if you don't look at, or fairness in education, if you're the affirmative and you don't look at this, if you don't look at the affirmative as being educational or fair, then we're basically not learning anything about how Colombia itself is who wants to get rid of these things, and so the U.S. is basically cooperating, and it is cooperating under plan. Moving on to plan. He said, turn military resources go to Asia, the impact is aggression and miscalculation, which is basically the word I'm looking for is that miscalculation is not probable. When we don't know where the military resources are going, we're not trying to look at the rest of the world. We're not trying to solve for the rest of the world. We're trying to solve for Latin America. So looking at Latin America, reducing the resources when it's already a small resource base, I doubt it would lead to that great of an escalation with China. He says that there's no solvency, that we normalize drug use. We are not, under solvency, we are not normalizing drug use. We're opening the road to demand side reform, which means we are helping the people who are affected by these drugs. So yes, I still have access to my solvency, and which is allowing us to take a better, more maternal type approach to solving this issue. On Advantage 1, he says no link, that there's no military action, that the 4th Fleet is there for friendships and partnerships. Look at my Proxy 10 second card on the Advantage. Navy is key to U.S. hedge, downsizing its role decreases hedge in U.S. image. This is bad, especially when you want, like, he's saying that either naval power is not key or the impact is triggered, which is the impact is great power wars. And he's saying there's no link. perception, even if you can't necessarily see it. If people know that the U.S. has the ability to be there and keeps that ability, then we are still preventing those things. We still have access to the impacts, still have access to that advantage. On advantage 2, Colombia, the link turn, he's saying there's a security vacuum that the drug cartels will fill in behind the U.S. However, if you look at my advantage, we are decreasing the role of Southern Command, which is interdiction and eradication efforts, the role we chose. There will be no security vacuum because Southern Command, as small as it is still somewhat effective. But Colombia itself will now be able to step up, as he's saying that they don't want to in his disadvantage. But also under plan.
Card score is going to be case and dissent.
Alright. Oh, just in case, and then this.
What?
So not T.
Not T.
Alright.
No T. You good?
Okay.
First, let's start on the China argument. She says that the miscalculation is not probable. I have a couple of responses. The first being is it's misunderstanding the link level of the turn. You can extend across the setter at L13 evidence. So literally indicates that it is like status quo is when military capacity gets freed up, it's going to get shifted to Asia Pacific, the Asia Pacific region as part of the pivot. Second, my additional analysis would be specifically under Donald Trump, who's like his whole campaign was we have to deal with China, probably means there's an even greater risk of freed up military resources getting shifted there as they've been trying to contest in the South China Sea. Probably means that the like risk of the turn is going to be stronger than the risk of affirmative solvency, which should be enough to vote neg. But additionally, on the analysis of miscalculation being improbable, one I would say is like miscalculation is widely regarded as like the strongest internal link to conflict with China, sort of this like misperception of like what either side is doing in the South China Sea is probably going to be the thing that could lead to like World War III. But even my analysis that I make on the card isn't even necessary. Like I'm not claiming like a nuclear war extinction like level impact. I'm simply saying like there's going to be some regional conflict there if we continue to boast up military, and that's going to lead to destabilization. She responds that we need to focus on Latin America. We don't know where the military is going. My analysis is again extend the set around evidence, and additionally we can't ignore the integration of international military affairs. Even though they are split up into commands, they are still all part of certain branches in the U.S. military, meaning the military resources are still up for game for shifting in different theaters of operation. Means that like just like status quo is that. Let's go to the solvency argument. And I want you to extend across the Stanholt 15 evidence. She says that like we're not normalizing drug use, we're just simply allowing demand reduction policy to be able to proliferate. My analysis is the Steinholt card she uses, so like Australia is a country that for 30 years is engaged in demand reduction. And the Steinholt evidence is actually a study on the efficacy of these policies and has come to the conclusion that these policies basically condone drug use through the form of harm reduction. That yes, while leads to a short-term net amount of harm reduction, actually justifies stronger drug addictions and the maintenance of said drug habit. Probably means that it's not actually going to solve any sort of issues in the like any drug issues. Means probably strong enough mitigation. Also, you can, on the advantage, extend across the evidence I read on the Sanchez 16 evidence. It says the Fourth Fleet has no ships. Probably means the trade-off doesn't ever happen. She tries to extend the Kropsky 10 evidence, but my analysis would be that my cards are both post-data evidence and are specific to Southern Command. Second, you can extend across the Till 13 evidence. She drops the no link and no solvency argument that were literally her own author says the war on drugs needs military support and is a big operation, and that there are no silver bullets. Probably going to be a strong enough point in which when her like link level of her advantage, her own author is saying there's no silver bullets, probably mean the plan doesn't solve for the grandiose impacts they claim. On the Read 15 evidence, extend across that analysis as it post-states her argument. She says that it's like a perception link, but my argument would be that then, again, like the Read evidence still should trigger the impacts in the status quo. Probably means there's no reason to buy the affirmative articulation. On the advantage too, extend across the non-uniqueness, where I say that they already passed the peace deal in the card, so they already agreed on the U.S.-Colombia deal that either slow solves or the advantage is empirically denied. Probably going to be a strong reason not to give the affirmative any access to their impacts. On the link term, the Quintana evidence, extend across the Quintana 14 evidence. They say like there's going to be no security vacuum because it's still somewhat effective, but my analysis says if Southern Command's effective, then that probably means the security vacuum is going to be stronger. Probably straight turns herself on that analysis. Also drops the argument that DA is a straight turn to it. You can also drop down the impact level. Extend across the Walker 14 evidence. There's no human extinction, means there's really no terminal impact to this, means you're only going to be evaluating structural impacts. Let's go to the dissat. Literally extend across the entirety of the dissat. Extend across the uniqueness that Colombia is currently doing a lot of good work on the fight against human trafficking, and also extend across that's the U.S. Department of State evidence. Extend across the Southern Command 16 evidence, where they say that because the Southern Command currently handles Colombia fight against drug crime, but the plan reverses this, and then extend across the Wilcox 15 evidence that indicates Colombia's military operations combating drugs and terror trade-off of fighting human trafficking. The only reason they're able to make these strides that we see in the status quo is because Southern Command has handled the drug crime, allowing Colombia to be able to focus on that. And on the impact level, extend across the Santos, Cuomo, and Duarte evidence. Human trafficking is a new form of structural violence against women that outweighs the affirmative. Even if you give the affirmative any sort of risk of any of their impacts, which I don't think you should based on all the drop solvency arguments. The drop disad straight turns and outweighs the app. Particularly, you can extend across the warrant that the Santos, Gomez, and Duarte arguments make about the intersectionality of this form of structural violence, that it comes at the intersection of state, capitalist, imperialist, and racial power, and that is what makes it such a unique and pervasive form of structural violence, because that would outweigh the app, because it is such a, because it does function as a conduit for these forms of sort of negative power to be able to converge and fluidly be realized in this sex market. Probably means that entrenching all four of these forms of like pervasive negative forms of power is a unique bad thing. And also I would say like on the structural violence outweighing the app, it's just the probability, right? Like this is already happening right now. Colombia's solving this right now. Probably means that like probably going to have a better timeline of the risk of solving it through the dissad than you would on case.
looking at on case, the top of case, where he's saying that I didn't answer any of these solvency arguments that, about the no solvency demand reduction policy fails. So basically, this is just coming down to whether the affirmative solves or not. The problem I outlined is that demand side drug reform is better than supply side. That supply side has failed, it's led to a war on drugs, and these countries are telling us that they don't want it anymore. With, like, looking at Dickinson 16, the drug war is failing due to supply side policies and approach. So the affirmative took the route of decreasing drug interdiction and eradication in some efforts in by Southern Command. We solve because Latin America is pushing for reform. Look at my Newman and Romero 15. It is barely outdated by his claims of no solvency. Latin America is pushing for reform. If they want to try this, why should we stop them? Looking at the second card, interdiction fails. Collie 14, extend this card across. Interdiction fails, meaning meaning that supply is like, I want to take you to the line where it says that there is the Hydra effect. You cut off one head and multiple more grow back. We solve because we stop dealing with the Hydra and we deal with the people who are affected by it. The plan is effective. Looking at advantage 1, he's saying that the trade-off doesn't happen and that Reed 15 would still trigger the Great Power Wars, but obviously that's not happening. So there's something else in there that we gotta look at, but advantage 2, he's saying that SQO solves because peace talks already happened, and that I turned myself because Southern Command is effective, but it is small. It's not as effective as it could be, but it is small. Looking at the disadvantage, the structural violence against women that outweighs, how do you, there is no case of outweighing in the instance where interdiction fails.